Some time ago, someone, I can't remember who, gave me this academese phrase, licking the cookie, for when you put out the first paper on a thing, not because you really fully understand it, but because you want to be the first one. I'm Will, and you're watching Thinking Linguistically. Today, I'm going to lay out an idea that I don't really know how to publish because it's a little bit silly, but that I think is interesting. I looked through academic literature on Google Scholar and stuff. I couldn't find any previous mention of this as a generalization, so maybe we're licking the cookie. I don't know. Maybe it's new. We're calling it the Fink Effect. Andrew Fink was my TA in college in German. He's the one who first made this observation to me. The generalization goes like this. When you have food in your mouth, it is harder to speak in a second language than in a first language. I'm trying to be careful how I phrase it because, if you put the things in the wrong order, it just sounds dumb. It's harder to speak a second language than a first language. Well, of course it is. This is a generalization about when there's, food or some other foreign object in your mouth. Maybe you're holding your keys or a pen or what. So Andrew told us this story once about, I think he was visiting Chile, and he spoke fluent Spanish, but he said when he had something in his mouth, once, the Spanish that he spoke was so bad that his host family couldn't even tell that it was him speaking. And this is an interesting kind of puzzle. Why should that be? I wouldn't be making this video if I had only that one data point, but I have my own that I made a note of the other day. And by the other day, I mean, more than a year ago.
Well, time makes fools of us all.
My experience, the 4th of February, 2024, approximately 1843. I just epically failed the in Lumi because of a tater tot. A literal moment of complete crash of derivation.
Shumi is my friend. She's delightful. I'll plug her Instagram in the doobly-doo below. Shumi's name is spelled H-L-U-M-I. It's a Xhosa name. Xhosa is the language they speak around here. And so this is a sound that English doesn't have. It's a sound that Welsh has something kind of like. I'm not sure exactly how similar, but it is a lateral fricative, a voiceless lateral fricative. My old Zulu teacher, who was actually a Xhosa guy, used to say, imagine an egg frying, and that's the sound. Of course, for a lateral fricative, that just means it's articulated along the sides of the tongue.
Brian Jick at University of British Columbia did this project a couple of years ago where they overlay ultrasound on video. So you can see the tongue through the cheeks. This is him articulating a lateral fricative. You can see sort of more towards the front, but it doesn't have to be that way.
The sides of the tongue are kind of long. There's a lot of different spots you could potentially make a fricative Exactly how many places there are probably depends on the shape of your mouth and your dentition. For me, I can definitely do one further forward, or I can do one further back, and you can do it with a longer or shorter, the amount of contact between the tongue and the palate is, I think you can vary. You may notice I'm also doing stuff with my lips. That's probably informative. More on that in another video. Now we got to do a video about secondary phonetic enhancement. Thanks, Kawasaki. Thanks, Kaiser. To sum up, the gist of the story is I had a thing in my mouth and it impeded me talking, but the real difficulty that I experienced was with the foreign sound I'm less used to. I think this is probably informative for understanding. Are 2 data points enough to be evidence for this thing? No, but everyone I've asked has said, yeah, I think that's probably true. I don't know how to assess that as data points, right? A subjective impression of a thing. It's a kind of meta study, but it's like a pattern. Here's my proposal. Let's do some citizen science. Why don't you make your own video of yourself speaking, with something in your mouth, a pen, food, whatever, marshmallow, speaking your first language and your foreign language, and see for yourself if the second language is actually harder. I'll let the comments section judge how faithful your second language pronunciation is. Now, of course, just having the generalization doesn't tell us if it's a phonetic thing or a phonological thing or both or something else entirely.
If you're a viewer who doesn't know the difference between phonetics and phonology, I have a video to recommend to you. It's from the Enhancing Linguistic Scholarship in Eastern Africa channel, and I'll put a link in the description. All right, back to the show.
But I have an idea. The idea is maybe it's partly to do with experience, right? If you speak a language your entire life, it's the first language you learn, well, you're going to be pretty comfortable making the sounds. But when you start learning a second language later in life, you probably are learning the sound in a sort of neurologically different way, right? Like, your brain is not plastic in the way that it was when you were a child. The thinking is maybe there's a low-level thing like, well, having the object in your mouth, of course, changes the aerodynamics, changes the acoustics, changes how you articulate around it. But also, there could be a more internal, deeper level kind of thing where the reason why it does that disproportionately for second language pronunciations is because you sort of need more energy or more effort, or it's cognitively harder to produce those. I don't know exactly what that predicts. Let me at least lay out what I think this predicts. I think if you are speaking a foreign language, you ought to be able to use the Fink effect as a diagnostic, right? You can tell if you are interpreting a sound as being categorically different or categorically the same as the sound in your home language by seeing how much harder it is to produce when you've got an obstruction. Depending on your priors, it may be no surprise or a huge surprise that there isn't a lot of research out there on articulation with food in the mouth. It seems kind of wasteful to spend that much time thinking about talking with food in your mouth, right? This is not a thing that's very consequential for anybody. I know that bite blocks are a thing. I've never done any research with these myself, but I would have thought that that would mean that, someone had looked at the acoustics.
And indeed, someone had. It turns out that Yadong Liu and Brian Jick did a whole bunch of papers on this. That's actually where this image came from. Let me also clarify that it's not just Yadong Liu and Brian Jick who are doing this. There's a whole lot of other people involved in the research. Science is usually collaborative these days. It's not like they've been looking specifically at the phonetics of talking with your mouth full. They've been looking at kind of a broader range of things about like how other stuff impacts speech, especially articulatorily. But one of the things they did is compare speech in first and second languages, both with and without a bite block in your mouth. Now, they weren't looking specifically at difficulty, partly because difficulty is hard to measure. You might even say it's difficult. But this is the closest I've been able to find to research that specifically targets this thing that I'm calling the Fink effect. What they were looking at more specifically is tongue height and tongue bracing. So, like, normally when you speak, your sides of your tongue sometimes will brace against the top teeth or the palate so that you can position the more forward bits of the tongue more precisely. They found two things that I think dovetail really nicely with this thing that we've been calling the Fink effect. First, when you're speaking your second language, you tend to have a little bit more variability in tongue height. You brace it a little bit less. Second, that difference is accentuated by having a bite block in. That's what you see in the blue bars in this image. Now, I didn't know this paper existed until well after I started making this video. I didn't find it in my initial search, partly because the lingo is quite specific, right? Bite block perturbation is the term you need to search for to find this kind of thing. If you just Google pronunciation with food in the mouth, well, maybe you find this video. Who knows? Anyway, if you've ever experienced the Fink effect for yourself, please let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. My name is Will. This channel's Thinking Linguistically, and you can like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this one.